And he just says to me, well, I've got AIDS. And I'm looking down at my hands and I'm covered in his blood. And I've got cuts all over my hands from fighting this bloke. And so they tested him. He didn't actually have AIDS, but what he did have was hepatitis C. At the Olympics, a girl in the Australian 8 did stop rowing at the Olympics. And that went down not particularly well, as you can imagine. So, and it destroyed life. So, it's about what effect do you have on others if you stop. So honest answers are great, but they're also very revealing, right? And I can recall one conversation where the person provided me their expectations, and they hadn't shifted their expectations from their previous executive, and they just thought I was going to roll in and do exactly the same thing, and that wasn't going to be the case.
All right, welcome back for another episode. Today I have a guest that is rather unique and also brings an amazing story. 15 years on the front line with the Victoria Police. Now, if that didn't give you an indication, yes, he's on the other side of the world. In fact, in a green room, as we were just talking through, like, hey, you've got everything, you've got water, you've got your phone notifications silenced and so forth. Like, bro, who'd be calling me at 5:30 in the morning? And I'm like, good point. In context, it's 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. So, so you are on the other side of the world. But your life in the previous season comprised of detective work, task force assignments, earned commendations, a group citation, the Ethical Service Medal, and the National Medal for Diligent Service to Community Safety. Then you traded the badge for boardrooms, and this thing's where it can kind of get really gets interesting. Helped establish two of Australia's anti-corrupt bodies from the ground up. Holds an MBA from MIT, where he studied alongside the founders of HubSpot, and learned economics from a Nobel Prize winner. Masters from our MIT, exclusive or executive studies at Harvard. Today, he runs Grip 6 implementation out of Geelong, I think I said that.
Yeah, you said that right.
Sweet. I said it two different ways, though.
Yeah, that's okay.
They're pretty much your first EOS implementer. Over 60 Australian businesses have run on the system that he teaches. More than 450 sessions delivered. Industry ranges between construction and mining to healthcare, tech, finance, retail, veterinarians. Co-founded the independent executives to close integrator gap for EOS ran companies worldwide. Runs the Integrator Academy and Global Integrator Awards. And when he's not in the office, he's on the water coaching young men or young athletes at the Corio Bay Rowing.
You're right.
Sure, okay, gotcha. I gotta have that Australian part of that accent in there.
Yeah, that's
Rowing
okay.
club.
Gotta make it difficult somewhere.
But here's what you don't see in a resume. 30 years ago, a car accident rerouted every single thing that followed, which we're going to dive into today. So Murray Smith, my dude, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Yeah, thanks, Karl. You showed a bit of grit getting through that, mate. So with all those pronunciations, so well done you.
Thanks, man. This was definitely one of those I would say uncomfortable, the hard things I had to do today. So checked it off. Yeah, man. Thanks again for spending some time with us today and give us some insights. When I ran across your bio and read more about you, your story is impressive. And this is one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast, because there is a true story to all of this, right? And I think that's where a lot of people misread highlight reels. Highlight reels meaning, we look on social media and everybody sees all of these different things, right? The titles, the cars, the houses, the money, the sales, blah, blah, blah. But they don't see the pivotal moment that caused, right? That caused all that. So Murray, man, if you don't mind, take me back to the early years before Geelong's EOS practice, before EMIT. before executive suites,
Yeah.
you're a young cop, man, in Victoria. What did that season look like for the day? Like, just paint us this quick picture of what your life looked like back then.
Yeah. So thanks, Karl. So interesting fact is when I finished what you would call high school, I got accepted into chemical engineering, and I started doing it. And then about 2 months in, I went, "Yeah, this isn't going to work for me." And so I went home, and so 18, went home, said to Mum, "Right, I'm not doing this." And she said, "That's all right. You better go out and get a job then." So after holding down a couple of, basic jobs for a couple of months, I ended up in Victoria Police because I thought, well, kind of like helping people. So let's do this until I can sort out what I want to do. And 15 years later, I finally worked out what I wanted to do. But in between, I had a lot of fun along the way. But and so essentially, that's how I ended up in a police force. And in terms of structure, it's slightly different than in the US. It's not local county or local city police. It's state. There is no other police. So the state police do the whole lot. From
Oh wow.
So the breadth of opportunities that you get within that are pretty broad. And so when I went in, my idea was okay, well, let's see if we can go to the baddest place in Victoria and work there, because that's going to be a lot of fun. And it took me a couple of years to get there. But as you mentioned earlier on the way, things happened, right?
Yeah.
So, you get experience. Like I was out of the police academy, and after 9 months, I was when I would go out on the road, it was pretty regular that I would be the most senior person on the what you would call a patrol car. We call it a divisional van. But and so here I am 9 months in, and I'm teaching other people how to do the job, and we're all just fumbling around trying to work out how does this work, right? And in the meantime, trying not to get killed. I clearly successfully managed that, but
yes, I think that's a success.
In those early days, and going to your point earlier about getting into a car accident, if I think back to that moment, like at that moment, like most people at that age, I was about 21 at the time, thought I was like most people that age, think you're pretty good at what you do. And that was a stark reality hit that said, hey, maybe you're not as good as you think you are, right? And so, that was on the way to a job that was pretty significant. There was some other, some of my colleagues were in a bit of trouble, and we had to get there quickly. And I was driving through what you would call downtown in Melbourne, because I was in Melbourne at the time, in the city itself working, and I essentially just collided with a very, very large truck. And, when you meet something that large and you're in something smaller, you don't win. And
that's true. That is true.
So it was pretty significant. And, I ended up, we got taken off to hospital and all that sort of stuff. And initially they thought my partner was more injured than me, which I thought too. But as it turned out, I was more injured than her.
Oh, wow.
And so I was off work for 6 months with fractured kneecaps and various other injuries. And I also developed a blood clot in that time. And so that was fun. Back to hospital for a period of time while that sorted out. And of course, I was on medication, so I couldn't work, because if I started bleeding at work, it was going to be a problem, because I was on this blood thinning drugs. So, and that's how I ended up. But from and I'm sure we'll talk about, that was a cornerstone of what got me to where I am today. But, when I did return to work, fun fact, I was back at work for about a month, and I got into a pretty large brawl in a bar where I turned up with my partner, who was a sergeant at the time, and we were standing at the front, and there was 200 people just going for it in this bar.
Gosh.
And the sergeant turned to me, he was very, been around for a long time, said, "Murray, we're not going in there." And I said, "Yeah, good." And
we'll pass.
So we're standing out the front waiting, and like I've just got back, and it's like, oh, and so we're standing out the front waiting for other reinforcements to turn up so we can get control. And the owner runs out and says, "Oh, my security guard's lying on the floor and they're kicking him in the head." And it's like, okay, so now we don't have a choice, right? So you come back to this grit factor, and so now you're in a position where you're feeling pretty frightened. And it's natural to feel it, but then it's like, okay, well, I've got to compartmentalise that, put that in a corner. And the sergeant said, "Well, we got to go." And I said, "Righto, we're in." And so once you're in, you're 100% committed, right? 100%. You just got no choice. It's not like you're 50% in. You got to be 100% in. So we walk in, and within the first minute, had my arm broken in by a couple of blokes, and it got pretty serious when a couple of them tried
and you're
to
on
grab
blood thinners at this time too, right? This is after
no, I'd just come off it. I'd just come off the blood thinners. So this was like I'd had 6 months off, and now I'm back at work a month in. And, arm broken in the first, minute of this fight. And again, it's a choice, right? It's like, oh, well, this isn't working out too well, but we keep going, right? So because now it's on. And, it got a bit worse with people trying to grab, because like in the US, we're armed. And thankfully. So people were, a couple of guys were trying to grab my firearm and pulling it out of the holster, and it was. But anyway, I won't go into the details about how I dealt with that. But let's just say that a couple of people weren't feeling the best pretty quickly after that.
Imagine not.
Anyway, we managed to get through that, but I had my arm broken, and I worked out the shift because I didn't actually realise it was broken. It felt sore, and I thought, oh, that's no good. But and then. By the end of the shift, I thought, oh, this is really starting to hurt. So, off to the hospital and, in a cast for another, I think it was about 6 weeks. So been back 4 weeks, in a cast for 6 weeks, at work, but can't go out on the road because, not going on the road with the cast, but you just stay in the station and do what you need to do there.
Light duty. And
then fun fact, come back and on night shift and then up in what is, I don't know what you would call it in the US, but these are like high-rise public housing type area, low socioeconomic, high crime area. And one of our other units was chasing a car thief, and he jumped out of the car and he was running. So we were up there. I was working with a couple of other people, and so we see him running around in the park, and so out of the car chasing him, not feeling awesome because I'm still not that fit after coming off a couple of injuries, right? So end up chasing this bloke, and adrenaline gets the better of you, and so does competitiveness, right? You want to win.
That's
right?
true.
So,
yes.
I'm going to catch this guy. So we caught him, and in this stairwell in this high rise, and at that point I was by myself, and it was, he clearly didn't want to come to the police station. I clearly wanted him to, so it turns into a fight. In this stairwell, having a fair fight. Well, when I say fair, I don't mean fair, because I wasn't playing fair, but I mean it was going on for a decent while, and there's blood flying everywhere. Most of it his, and I've got cuts on my hands because we've been jumping fences and all this sort of stuff.
Gosh.
And anyway, so I get him under control, and then a couple other people turn up and walking him back to the car, and he turns to me and he just says to me, well, I won't tell you what he exactly said. I'll take out the language, but he just said, well, you're in a lot of trouble. And I said, oh, why is that, mate? I said, it looks like it's really you that's in the trouble.
Right,
mate.
Yeah.
And he just says to me, well, I've got AIDS. and I'm looking down at my hands, and I'm covered in his blood, and I've got cuts all over my hands from fighting this bloke. And so off to hospital I go to get the various jabs that you get to sort of minimise that sort of thing. And but then so we took blood from him. Well, a nurse did. We didn't. I took enough blood from him at an earlier point. And so they tested him. He didn't actually have AIDS, but what he did have was hepatitis C, which is kind of, it's more contagious, and it also, if it gets into your liver, it's pretty significant.
It's pretty bad. Yeah.
And so so then I sit out. Then I'm still working and it takes 3 months at that point to work out whether or not you've caught hepatitis C. So you're sitting around for 3 months waiting to get these tests to work out whether you've got hep C. So that was, within a year, those three. So I came back to work 1 month in, broken arm, that fixes up, get back out on the road, within a couple of weeks back on the road.
That's crazy.
Cop this. So
yeah, I mean this.
So that was a pretty traumatic time, but it was like you talk about seasons. That was probably winter, I reckon.
Oh wow, yeah. As you're explaining this, I'm just like, usually you could probably expect to hear something like that over a couple year span, right? Getting in a vehicle accident and breaking your arm because a 200 person brawl. Then you get into a situation where a plot twist, right? Oh no, I'm not really in trouble. I mean, I may be in trouble with the law, but you've got a bigger problem, mister. That's a heck of a initiation to the force, man.
Yeah, that was like that was year 2 and 3, and then I did finally get to the place where I wanted to go to, where it was the Badlands.
Yeah.
Out in at that time. It's a bit different now, that the area that was pretty significant, and that's where all the fun, and I had a lot of fun apart from those incidents at the other places I worked in those first 2 or 3 years. But when I got there, it was just like a whole new world. It was like there was a time where at that police station where the locals decided they didn't really like the police, so petrol bomb through the back door of the police station, burnt a third of the police station down. Jeez. which was pretty funny, because what was happening was, when the fire was on, I wasn't there at the time. I'd just finished shift, but the guys that were on, they were grabbing their paperwork and throwing it in the fire so they could have this excuse about, no, that all got lost in the fire.
Oh, instead of saying, "Hey, my dog ate it," it's the fire ate it.
Yeah.
Oh fire. My gosh, I can actually picture that. Actually,
yeah, it was pretty full on. Like, that was a place where people had to turn up regularly to the police station to a form of bail, where they would have to sign on, and they would, like, some of them weren't the smartest or the sharpest tools in the shed. They'd turn up in stolen cars. So you get, mate, you come into the police station, you've come in a stolen car. Like, come on, right? There's all this sort of stuff going on.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it was good fun.
Yeah, good fun. That's what I explain it. That's for sure. That's
well, to your point about grit, like you can either, what's that book, Gap or the Gain? It's kind of like you can either look at it as a gap or a gain, right? And
that is true.
So
that is true.
It's kind of like,
well,
you can laugh about it, or you can cry, and crying's not really an option because it doesn't get you anywhere. But
that's a good point. In fact, ironically, my previous guest that I was telling you earlier in the green room I was just on with is a little bit about that. In fact, her question for you is going to be, and as I said previous episodes, so far every question that my guests have asked the next guest has been spot on. Because some of that is these turning points that we have in life, right? So, for you, young professional, you're a serious car accident, and so much changed from that moment, right? This brawl, and it's this constant, and. this was a pivotal moment, right? And so
Yeah.
your body is wrecked. You know, your
Yeah.
identity is tied to a job that requires a working body, right?
Yeah.
So in that season, man, in that period, what did you tell yourself was going to happen next?
Yeah. So it's,
Yeah.
great question. So it is fascinating that when I was sort of lying in hospital beds and whatnot and thinking to myself, I really love what I do. Like, I didn't even know what day I got paid. Like, people say, oh, it's payday today. And I go, oh, is it? Okay. It was kind of like, I was living that life. It was just like, this is fun. Like, why would you want to do anything else? And of course, that's a stupid question, but at the moment in time, it was like, this is really good fun. But I did think to myself, this is really good fun. I love doing it, but what am I going to do if I can't do it?
Exactly.
And so that started the process of saying, well, I better get a qualification. So that's when I applied to go back to university, you would call college, and start studying. So I did an undergraduate in criminal justice administration, which was fine, and that sort of was directly related to what I was doing. But I was doing that part-time, so I kept working, and I was doing shift work. And then when I wasn't doing shift work, I was either, part of my life outside of that was going to university, which was fantastic because for two reasons. One, I was getting a qualification that sort of was making sense to me and sort of allowing me to open up other opportunities should I need to.
Makes sense.
But equally, when you're in that sort of environment, police environment or regimented environment, there is a significant weight of how people think. And they all generally think a particular way. Not all, but there's a volume of people that, that cultural sort of thing. And by going to university, I was actually exposed. I didn't realise it when I made the application. I didn't actually see this as an outcome. But you were in a room full of people, like I was 21, 22 by then. And so students were a bit younger than me, but some were a bit older as well. And it was like I was getting exposed to people challenging the way I was thinking as much as learning whatever you learn at university. So so I was lucky enough to say, hey, my perspective was changing during that time in terms of saying, well, you're not always right. You're not always there's other ways things can get done. Yeah. And so people were outwardly challenged the way you would think, which was great. But and so that started that journey of, continuous learning. And from there, that went on to a master's program, so a postgraduate program in human resource management, industrial relations. Now, in Australia, industrial relations, or what's now known as workplace relations, all the law around that is a bit different to the US. That's in some ways it's a lot more difficult to navigate. But so it was good to learn that. But of course, that just kept me learning. And then from there, the itch started, like, in terms of when I was doing my postgraduate study, it was like, well, I wonder if I could hack studying overseas. Because here we read all these case studies and whatnot that come out of Harvard or wherever they come out of. And you think, I was starting to think to myself, well, why wouldn't, naively, why couldn't I go and study at those universities where these textbooks and case studies are coming out of, not knowing what that journey would look like?
we rarely ever do, but I agree.
So and then that led to studying overseas at a much later journey. But that's where it started. So there was that started. But from that, I can trace so many things from that moment where I said, well, what am I going to do if I can't do this? It's like, well, from there, if I didn't go to university and do all my study, I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have changed careers in terms of moving into, what was then into what was a government organisation restructure and do set up organisations. I wouldn't have done that. Wouldn't have ended up being an EOS implementer. All these things that come off this particular moment in time that at the time you actually don't realise the pivotal nature of it. So now I look at things like MIT and I think, well, that is a cornerstone of my life, but I never would have had that cornerstone if at a very young age I didn't think, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life if I can't do this?
That's a good point. Yeah, I think a lot of people can resonate with that, right? It is, using these pivotal moments, but when we look back, we weren't ready beforehand for these pivotal moments, right? To steer us in a different direction.
Yeah.
Again, ironically, Carly Pimpin, her, that was a guest I was just talking about. Talking about these pivotal moments, these boulders, if you will, where we go through these events, and it's the outcome of these events where it brings on the next chapter, the next version that we can choose to be grateful for, because it does give us into, or it puts us in another environment, whether it's school, it's a career, it's a business, or relationships, finances. It allows us to climb into, another level, right? That we look back, it's like, man, I never would have done X, Y, and Z if it wasn't for this moment, right?
Yeah.
Like you look back, right? When you raised your hand to join the force, looking back, or if you're, I think you said you're in your early 20s, you never could have forecasted you being in an accident, then getting into a 200-person brawl, right? And then shortly after that, have your life threatened yet again. You could never have predicted that, but fast forward, it's because of that, and plus a lot more is why you're here where you are, right?
Yeah.
So
sometimes I think that reflection is really important, Karl.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, and that's something I've been really cognizant, or really intentional on lately in this time of my life, is being intentional, or being more aware of the season changes, right? Instead of asking why me, or why is this happening, ask, what can I learn from this? Or what is the message that I need to get from this 2x4 moment? 2x4 meaning I'm about to get slapped in the face with this, whatever this thing is coming. What can I take away from this? Is it a pivot I need to make in a relationship? Is it a career pivot? For you, it was a career pivot. Numerous ones, in fact, right?
Yeah. So, and those career pivots are interesting in themselves. Like the journey that led me to those was more about, I was studying at the time. I was really enjoying what I was doing. I'd done a few interesting things along the way as I was studying, such as, being in a drug task force, which was great fun. Clearly didn't look like what I look like to you today. Very different appearance at that point in time.
Same. I can relate to that. I think a lot of us can.
And, did some interesting work in the place I was talking about earlier, and then ended up being a detective in various locations. But as I was doing that, I was studying, and on that journey of part-time study, and I was just thinking there's got to be more to it than this. So I was kind of outgrowing the roles I was in, and I wasn't feeling bitter about it. I was just thinking there's got to be more to this. So I was really lucky that when I was at the 15-year mark, it was like, wow, I wonder what. And so my wife showed me this advertisement for a job at the time and said, oh, why don't you put in for this? And it was an operations manager role at a regulator at state level. And I thought, oh, yeah, all right, I'll put in for it, because that'll tell me what I'm missing for the future promotions, that I might go for within the police force. I thought, oh, yeah, this would be a good experience just to go through and go, oh, yeah, maybe you need to fill this gap or whatever it was. Anyway, so I sit the interview and they come back and say, oh, do you want the job? So, and then, again, that moment in time where, oh, well, hang on, I didn't really expect to get the job, and here it is. And so I actually took the job, and not really knowing what the future would look like. And then from there did all this restructuring and learned all this stuff about organisational change and all that. So that was the first pivot. But as I was doing that, it was like, this is like working in government organisations. It's, I'm pretty sure this is universal. They're not really action orientated.
No, that is universal.
I'm pretty confident of that, and it was very frustrating, but I was learning stuff, and that's fine. And it was at that point that I thought, let's scratch this itch about whether I can study overseas. And I thought, well, the first step of that has to be just going overseas to a university, work out whether or not, just get a taste, understand whether this is something that you want to do, and understand whether it's something you can do. So that's when I thought, well, I'll do an executive program, stupid me, in Australia, think, oh, well, yeah, look, I'll do an executive program at a university. Where should I? Oh, yeah, I'll apply to do an executive program at Harvard. Yeah, okay, sure, no worries, we'll do that. And so, apply. Yeah, it's an executive program, so entry isn't that rigorous per se. But anyway, I went and did this 3-week course at Harvard University, and I came away, and it was great fun. Really enjoyed it. Met some really interesting people. Really inspiring place to be in terms of learning and all that sort of stuff. And I came back thinking, I can do this. So then when I came back, I thought, oh yeah, all right, well I'll apply to go to Harvard. Why not? Somebody has to go there. And so I came back and I applied. And I went through the process and I got waitlisted, and I thought, oh, well maybe that's it over. And I didn't actually get in. And then I thought, no, I'll give it one more go. But then I expanded my horizons and thought, well, what other institutions would I like to go to? And then I thought, well, MIT sounds good. So okay, so we'll apply to that. So I applied to both Harvard and MIT, and, woe be me, there's no need to shed any tears, but I got accepted into both, and I had to make a decision about whether I went to Harvard or MIT, and I chose MIT because I knew, coming back to the whole purpose of this podcast, I went to MIT because I knew it would be harder for me, because what I was going to be doing an MBA there, and I was going to be doing stuff about finance, accounting, stuff that I was pretty shallow on. Yeah, and I thought, well, let's get better at that. And so, that's why I ended up at MIT. So I moved over to the States and lived there while I was doing my MBA in a program called the Sloan Fellows Program. Now, I wasn't actually in the same class as the people you mentioned earlier. They were a couple of years before me doing HubSpot and so forth, but they would come back and talk to us and tell us what they're, and teach us things. And, former class people like Alan Mullally, the former CEO of Ford, went through the Sloan Fellows program, so he would come back and say, okay, you're the CEO of Ford, you got 6 months of cash, what are you going to do? It was all those sort of scenarios. And so that was again, that was the next pivot. And then the final, well, not the final pivot, the pivot up until now, I suppose is a better way to describe it, is coming back from that and then becoming an implementer.
Real quick before we keep rolling. Maybe life hit you hard. Business fell apart. Career isn't working out. Relationship ended. Health took a dive. And now you're standing in the rubble trying to figure out what the next move even looks like. Or maybe nothing blew up at all. On paper, you're winning, sure. But on the inside, something's off. If you're not in crisis, you're at a crossroads. And the playbook that built the life you have is not the playbook that builds the one you want. Either way, you're stuck. Not broken, stuck. Between who you were and who you're becoming. Most self-help just piles more weight on the load you're already carrying. I do not want to do that. I put together a free video series called The Grit Code Exposed. And I want to invite you to check it out. 7 short videos, that's it. The 5 laws that change everything for me and every client I coach. The same 5 that every person who's ever come back from the fire has walked through, whether they had a name for it or not. No fluff, no 90-minute webinar, no bait, just the free video series. You can start it tonight. Grab it at gritcodeexposed.com. One more time, gritcodeexposed.com. It's free. You don't need more hustle. You need the next version, and this is how you find it. Check it out. See if it speaks to you, and if it does, I'll see you on the inside. All right, let's get back to the conversation. That's awesome, man. One thing I want to dig into for a second is you made mention that you intentionally chose to do the harder thing, right? You intentionally chose to challenge yourself, and I think a lot of people, I think they would do the latter, right? They would actually probably have done something, especially when you choose between 2 Ivy League prestigious schools. I think MIT's Ivy League, right? I think it is.
No, it's not, but that's okay. We keep stirring everyone else about it.
Well, there's still a prestigious school. MIT, I know is still a prestigious school, right? But, 2 prestigious schools, one's Ivy, one's not, but still, it's very well known. And you elected to go down the harder path that because you knew it was going to challenge you and help you grow. And despite the uncomfort feel, or, despite being uncomfortable, you still said, yep, let's go. Walk through the person right now that's probably listening to you like, are you nuts? Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you do that?
Yeah. So, going to MIT was all about just weighing up where were my strengths and where were my weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And my weaknesses were clearly around, if I think about all the things I was doing at that stage, I felt pretty confident around leadership, having been tested in various environments and leading a lot of, because by that stage I'd kind of experienced a fair bit in terms of leadership at executive level and senior management level and in Victoria Police as a sergeant and all this sort of stuff that I'd gone through. So I felt pretty confident about that. I mean, it wasn't that I couldn't learn more. Certainly I could. But I felt comfortable with that sort of space, leadership and management, particularly after doing my postgraduate study in human resource management and stuff like that.
Makes sense.
But what I wasn't confident in at all was the other side of the equation, which was all that numbers in terms of, finance and just numbers in general. And it was like, well, if anyone's going to test you around that, it's going to be at MIT. Yeah. And so I just thought, well, what's the point of moving at that stage my whole family across the other side of the world and doing something that's easier? I wouldn't say easy, but easier.
Not as challenging, right?
It's not worth the time and investment, and there is an investment financially and so forth in that.
Sure.
And it's like, well, I'm going to get the best bang for my buck, and the best bang for my buck is learning about stuff I don't know. And that's how that decision was made. It sounds pretty basic, but it was as simple as that. It was just like, learn stuff you don't know. Don't surround yourself with things that are awesome that you might have some idea about. And it didn't just stop through that that moment in time, Karl. It was also, I kept getting tested right through that period of time. I can recall turning up on the first day and, everyone, the whole cohort was in a classroom and I was thinking, there was people that had been involved in, at that stage, they'd been working for, I don't even know what the government agency was, but, that helped refinance Afghanistan and all these sort of things. And I'm sitting there going, why am I in this room? How did I get here? I'm the dumbest person in the room, right? And months after that, I remember, I was doing all these finance and accounting courses and I was just sitting at the place I was staying. There was a study room and I was sitting in that study room and I was just thinking, man, I've got no idea what I'm doing. Why am I here? And I was constantly tested, thinking, I could have gone down the road because Harvard's down the road. I could have gone down the road and had a much easier life. And it was really challenging. And then after a while, I just got better at it just through working harder.
Yeah.
And, I would see my colleagues and they would have had finance most of their career and they're just ripping out the numbers like it's no big deal. And I'm thinking, how did that work? And so it was really hard from that perspective. Gotcha. But I'm sure everyone was challenged in that course. It was just, that was the way I was challenged. Others would have been challenged in other ways.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's something I want to highlight here that you mentioned earlier. I think it was on your bio, but you kind of segmented on. Let's kind of walk through this journey for a bit, right? You went from a cop to a law student, or a student at MIT to pursue your MBA. Each one of those seasons, right, required different version of Murray, right?
Yeah.
In that season with MIT, you like you just mentioned, you thought you didn't belong, right?
Yeah.
Who did you actually think you were, right? And was the imposter syndrome, or was the imposter feeling about MIT, right? Because that right there, I think a lot of people can resonate with, is that imposter syndrome. Or was it really about every identity shift before that finally catching up to that point?
Yeah, initially it definitely was like, how did I end up in this room? So I was thinking, to your point, I did think maybe I don't belong in this room because this is some pretty switched on dudes and I've got no idea what I'm doing. And but then it was like, at that time, I'd watched a video of a fellow by the name of Brent Gleason, who's over there in the States, and he, he'd come out of the Navy SEALs, and he was always big about saying, "You're always in the fight. You're always in the fight." That was what their kind of mantra was about. So I was at that time, I was just thinking, well, I'm here. And it kind of took me back to, and that resonated with me because it kind of took me back to, much earlier days in my career. It's like, well, yeah, you are always in the fight. So get on with it. And so that was it. So imposter syndrome went after I, had those challenging moments early on in the program. It was like, well, I'm here. They selected me.
Yeah.
I put an application in. They said I'm good enough to be here, so own that and get on with it. So that's what happened. So whenever I was sitting in an exam or whatnot, and I was thinking, man, I've got no idea what they're asking for here, I would just go, no, always in the fight, just write stuff down. So it was that was the attitude I took. I just thought, well, I'm here, and so I think always in the fight resonated with me because I'd been in so many fights, and I thought,
that is true.
You decide.
That's very well appropriate.
You decide whether you win or lose. Sometimes you may not decide that, but the majority of the time it's about you. So it's like, get on with it. And then, and that also resonated with me from, my sporting days with rowing and so forth. It's like, it hurts when you row. It hurts a lot. And the only way it stops hurting is if you stop. But if you stop, you're letting others down and you don't finish the race, and that's not acceptable. So you just keep going.
That's so good. Peer pressure's a bitch, isn't it?
Yeah. So, well, strangely enough, there is a story, and it was well publicised here in Australia, of at the Olympics, a girl in the Australian 8 did stop rowing at the Olympics, and that went down not particularly well, as you can imagine. So, and it destroyed life. So, it's about what effect do you have on others if you stop.
Yeah, that's true. You probably, those are listening or watching. It doesn't have to be a sports team, right? It could be a family. It could be your workplace. It could be your business. There's always somebody's dependent on you. You may not be.
That's right.
You may not immediately know it, but it could be future down the road.
Yeah.
that somebody needed you, right? You
And it
know,
could be you that needs you down the road.
yeah, yeah, that's a great point too. 100%.
Yeah.
I agree,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, and I want to highlight this because this is something I really believe in. That the one system you attribute your success to is this: consistency beats
Mm.
motivation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I tell that to, yeah. I tell
yeah.
that to
So,
my EOS businesses all the time.
yeah, I agree. So talk to the person out there, right? What do you mean by this? Consistency beats motivation. You know, when you wake up, how does that rule actually play out in your day?
Yeah. So, to be clear, that's clearly not a quote that I came up with or anything like that. It's been around for a
Right,
long
right.
time, used by lots of people. But the principle of it is true, right? Is
Yeah.
about, you know, you can be motivated to go to the gym. You can be motivated to go to work, whatever it is, on a Friday. Hey, it's Friday. I'd love to go to the gym. Okay, yeah, great. I'm motivated. Woo, awesome. But that's not where you win. You win when you don't have that motivation and you turn up anyway.
Yes. Agree.
Um,
Agree.
and so, and if you really want to separate yourself from the pack, it's doing that, right? It's doing it
Yes.
when you don't want to do it,
Yeah.
because that's what your competitors are doing. Whether it's in business, I don't want to have this conversation with this staff member because it's going to be untidy, it's going to be messy, and I don't want to have to deal with them. But I know they're costing me money. But I'd rather not, because that conversation is going to be terrible, right? So they don't do it
Good point.
because they're not motivated for it.
That's a
But the
good
true
point.
business champions will go, you know what, this is costing me money. I'm going to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
And so the amount of times you run into businesses, I'm sure you've seen this, Karl, where they say, oh, Murray's a problem. He's a real problem child. I say, oh, how long's he been a problem for? Oh, about 12 months.
Huh.
And it's like, okay. And we haven't done
Yep.
anything about it? No. And that goes to your point about motivation and consistency. Consistency would say you deal with poor performers as quickly as you can. Motivation would tell us that we only do it when we feel ready to do it.
That's so good. I agree. That hits on another cylinder that I constantly say. It's easy to be a champion on the easy days, right? But it's on the difficult days where champions are forged. Whether they got a good night's sleep or not, they still show up. Whether they, had a bad day, they still show up. That's so true, man. I love your perspective on that. You worked with some very dysfunctional executive teams. I want to, mention that for a moment.
Haven't we all?
Yeah. I've been in government work as well on both sides. I've been a contractor as well as on the government side, and as well as some other corporations, and which I'm thankful for, because it really gave me the experience of who I don't want to be. Right.
Yeah.
But you said you're happy to discuss how to navigate and still get outcomes. Right. So, give me an example, or give the audience an example. What was the dysfunction, and what did most people miss, and what did you get as a result of it?
So this comes, so a lot of this sort of experience was before I was an EOS implementer. So at executive and senior management level, was like you would be in teams where it's just about horse trading, or it's just the culture is what it is and you can't control that, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So for me, it was all about understanding, well, if this is the environment I'm in, and how much of this environment do I control? And when you work out, well, what are the boundaries of what I control? It's then saying, well, let's deal with that. Let's deal with what's inside those boundaries. So, you would have a team. So in my experiences, they would either number between 50 and 200, whatever it might have been. And it was like, well, how do I make it so what's inside those boundaries? How do I make sure that this is operating to the best effect that I can for that area? And then outside of that, it's kind of like, let's play the horse trading. Let's play the game. Okay, this is awesome. Everyone knows it's not working out really well, but nobody really wants to talk about that. And when you do, people get offended. So you just go, well, I can't change that. I'm not sure I want to change that. I'm not going to rage against the machine. Here's what I can do. Here's what I can do, and here's what I will do. So I'm going to set my goals and my idea of success within what that looks like, and then it's about applying those leadership skills to understand, well, how do I get the best out of people that are around me? What environment do they need, and what can I do to create that without being influenced too heavily from outside of that? Now, there's always an influence, and sometimes you just have to, suck it up and say, well, that's the way it is, and that's the cards we've been dealt with. So let's just deal with those.
Yeah.
But when you can, it's about just using the controls that you have to create a space that allows people to do what they can do, and it may not always be a success in itself, but at least you're having a go. And,
makes sense.
And so that's how I'd approach that. And in terms of that, that leadership piece for people, I don't profess to be a great leader at all or anything like that, but I've certainly seen what's good and bad along the way. And some things that are important are about, setting expectations. You hear that a lot, but it's also about understanding what other people's expectations are of you.
Yeah,
as much as so when I would take on a new role, it's at senior management or executive level, it would always be I'd sit down with my direct reports individually and say, okay, here's what I expect in terms of how we're going to conduct our business. And like everyone does that, right?
Sure,
and then I would turn the tables and say, what are your expectations of me?
That's hard to ask. That's hard for a lot of people to ask that. Hey, what are your expectations of me? And to hear an honest answer. Right? Yeah.
Well, so honest answers are great, but they're also very revealing, right?
Yeah,
and
that's true.
I can recall one conversation where the person provided me their expectations, and they hadn't shifted their expectations from their previous executive, and they just thought I was going to roll in and do exactly the same thing, and that wasn't going to be the case.
Disappointed them.
Yeah, well, there was, but it was really good because it was really clear that our expectations weren't aligned, and without having to have those difficult conversations, that person made a choice. It was best that they move on to their next role, and it was like, makes sense to me.
Yeah,
that was pretty much the conversation. I don't know. Most people expect a bit more, empathy, I suppose, around this. Oh, don't go. You're great. You're fantastic.
True.
And for me, it was like when that was said to me, I just said, well, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like
makes sense.
I think they were a bit shocked by that sort of bluntness of that. Yep, great, fantastic.
Yeah, I imagine they probably expected a different response, and I think it's the whole classic pattern interrupt, right? You interrupted the pattern because they expected to hear something, and you're like, oh no, I'm going to flip the switch on you. That's a great perspective, man. Fast forward to today, you touched on this, right? You run Grip 6, you're Geelong's first and most experienced EOS implementer. You've got independent executives in the background. Like you're doing a ton of work in the EOS space. So for those, real quickly that are not like EOS, what does that mean? Talk to, what does EOS mean? What is this whole thing? Like, talk to the audience about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. It comes out of the States, out of Detroit. Gino Wickman wrote this book called Traction many years ago, but prior to that, he simply came up with cobbling together EOS. So what it is about how to get what you want from your business in a way that makes sense. By that, it's just by applying simple and effective tools to your business. But be clear, simple doesn't always mean easy, but they're effective.
Really,
and it's about and it's just about being really clear on what your vision is, which is great. And everyone's 100% aligned. Everyone says that, The second part is really about traction and making sure that you're seeing that being executed and people being held accountable for that. And the final part is just being healthy, where you're having the conversations that others aren't prepared to have. Now, at a very high level, that sounds pretty simple, and everyone goes, "Yeah, but everyone does that." But it's how you do it, right? It's the focus on execution, right? Because everyone's got values and visions and whatever, and they slap them up on walls or on screensavers and say, "This is what we're all about," and then nothing happens.
Yep.
And the only time those things are referred to are in annual reports or some sort of glossy brochure about how awesome we are as a business. EOS is really about, oh, you want to be that? Well, let's go. Let's be that. And let's see what that looks like. And then holding each other accountable, and then driving a system through that makes that happen, and then delivering to that through, things like making sure you got the right people in the right seats, making sure you're looking at your numbers every day and understand what the numbers tell you rather than run on gut instinct. It's about being able to solve issues rather than just let them sit around for months. It's about having your processes documented that make sense. It's about having traction and cadence in your business where you can see things happening and you're holding yourself to account to a rhythm, to the point of motivated and consistently having a rhythm of which you are checking in and making sure you're doing what you say you're doing and moving to the next stage, whatever that looks like. And that vision piece that I spoke about earlier is really important. Like, tell people where you're going and how you're going to get there and where you are now. Otherwise, they actually don't know how they contribute to that. So that's essentially it. But it's about making that happen for businesses, like getting what they want. And most implementers that I know are pretty blunt about that. It's like, okay, let's put that up. Right, that's what you want to be? Are you sure about that? And they go, yeah, that's what we want to be. It's like, be careful what you wish for, because that's where we're going, right? And then it's just about pushing them to that point and giving them the tools that they can do it. And then success for me is really about them using EOS as how they run their business without me. So getting them to a point where they've got the skill and capability to use EOS without me. Interesting,
man. So walk us through this, right? Because I'm picturing this young man in his early 20s, cop, walking this through, right? So today, you've done over 450 sessions, 60 plus businesses running on EOS because of you, right? So why did you plant your flag there? What is it about EOS specifically that made you say, this is it. This is what I'm doing, and dedicate the rest of your life to this?
Yeah. So this was all about when I came back from America after studying, I was in an interim executive role, and it was paying the bills, right? It wasn't awesome, but it was paying the bills. Yeah. And a friend of mine handed me a copy of the book Traction. Of course, I've just finished my MBA within the last 12 months, and I read Traction, and I went, this is pretty cool. This is every way a business should operate. Should operate this way. And he said, why don't you become an implementer? I think you'd be really good at it. And I was thinking to myself, Karl, well, what could I teach business? I've got no idea about this. Yeah. And
imposter syndrome kicking in big time.
Yeah. So it's like, and then I thought, well, what I can teach them is, I've got all these relevant qualifications. I clearly couldn't go out by myself and say, hey, pick me because I'm, I can help you. But this framework gave me an ability, gave me a vehicle. And I was looking at it thinking, yeah, I could do that. I can teach people about structure, about discipline, about accountability, about all this sort of stuff. And the gaps that I've got with that, even though that I come out of MIT, are filled by this framework. So let's go. Let's do this. Now, the added bonus was, so I decided to do it, and I went and did boot camp and all that sort of stuff, and then became an implementer. But at that point in Australia, there's a guy called Daniel Davis over here who brought EOS to Australia. So there was only about, I can't even remember the number, but I can remember we would go to that. We would meet up every 90 days. And when I would go to meet up, we'd essentially, all the implementers in Australia would meet around a table because it was only there was a small number of us. But what I could see was that this system wasn't going away, that there was nothing, nothing that would be in it that would become redundant. All the principles and processes were, whether it was now or whether it's in 100 years, made sense. to run a great business. So I thought, well, why not get on the wave and see where this takes me, right?
Yeah.
So
let's ride it.
And now when you go to a meetup quarterly here in Australia, like there's a lot more people. Like there's, it's not like the US where there's about 850 odd implementers, but in Australia there's about, or the Asia Pacific region, there's about 40 or 50, and there's people in there that have done incredible things. Like there's a guy that I went through boot camp with, and he was the only guy in Japan that was doing it, and he said, "Oh, I'll do this." So,
that's cool.
and he's out of Detroit as well. But so whenever you think, it's so hard for me, there's always someone else that's traveling a harder road. So
there's always somebody else's that's harder than yours, right?
Yeah.
So
that's how I got into EOS. It was, and then from there, it's just, why do I do it? Why do I commit myself to it? Well, it's kind of a full circle moment. It's kind of, I'm just coming back to help people in a different way.
Yeah.
Right? Because, you think about the amount of hours you spend at work, and it's called work. So let's not get away from the concept that it's work. Like if you think it's, there's parts of it that you don't like. Even when I said, I loved what I was doing, I didn't know what day I got paid. There was parts of that job that I hated.
Sure. Absolutely. I can see that.
And equally, there's parts about what I do now that don't really float my boat, but that's life, right? So
it is.
It's work. So if you're going to spend that amount of time at work, let's try and maximize your time there, right? And make the most of it. And that's what EOS is about. It's just a force multiplier and making things work a bit better at work.
Real quick before you go, if you're still with me this deep into the episode, something in it hit you. Maybe it was the guest. Maybe it was one line. Either way, you're still here. And that feeling in your chest right now, that's the signal. Most people get a signal like that and do absolutely nothing with it. They close the app, life rushes back in, the moment's gone. 6 months later, they're in the exact same spot. I don't want that for you. So I put something together. I want to invite you to check out a free video series called The Grit Code Exposed. 7 short videos, the 5 laws I walk every client through. The same ones that rebuilt me when everything else fell apart. And if you listen closely today, you heard them running underneath the entire conversation. Because everyone who's come back from the fire walks through these 5 laws. Some find them on their own, some get help, but the laws don't change. Free video series. You can start it tonight. No fluff, no 90-minute webinar, just the series. And if you're going to do something with what you heard today, do this before life talks you out of it. Go to gritcodeexposed.com. One more time, gritcodeexposed.com. And hey, before I let you go, thank you for riding with me this long. It means a lot more than you know. Thank you. That's awesome, man. So, for the listeners out there, specifically those that are in Australia or anywhere else, that's listening and been running the same quarter 12 times in a row, or the visionary founder anywhere that needs an integrator to keep them from burning out, because right now, especially, and I've been down that path, they need somebody, to get them out of the rubble. Where do they start? Where do they find you? Where do they start with you? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so in terms of EOS implementation, the easiest way to do that is just put in Murray Smith EOS implementer into AI, Google, whatever you use nowadays, and I'll come up in one form or another. And of course, you've got my details, and I'm sure we'll circulate those as needed. But that's the best way to get in touch with me, and you can always you'll find that if you put EOS implementer Murray Smith or EOS Worldwide Murray Smith, it'll take you to a web page where you can get in contact with me direct, and it'll also have some various material on there to help you understand what EOS is all about. But equally, there's videos on there from me and testimonials and whatnot, so you can get a sense of what I do.
That's cool, man. I'll definitely be dropping all the links that we have access to. Of course, I assistant
Thanks, Karl.
who, yeah, of course, that she's absolutely amazing. So she'll be dropping all links in the show notes and so forth. So that way they could connect with you. So, all right. So as we wrap up, I've got a couple of rapid fire questions. I know we could talk forever on all this stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So in this season of life that you're in, Murray, what is your definition of grit?
Yeah, so my definition of grit is really about, it's really about, you know what you're about to go into. You know it might be really hard, and you actually don't know what the outcome will be, and you do it anyway.
Do it anyways. Love it. Love it. As you're talking through that, Murray, I'm envisioning that fight, that 200-person brawl, right?
Yeah.
You know it's about to go down. You don't want to do it, but you do it anyways.
Yeah.
So, but you didn't do it because it was reckless. You did it with good intentions. So just want to highlight that. All right. In this season of life, or I'll say it from my perspective, but you hear a lot of talk, and especially from your background in EOS, I'm sure you can appreciate this. There's always the talk of adding, right? Adding systems, adding strategies, adding. But also subtraction is also required as part of growth, right?
Should be,
Right. So for you, was it something you've had to unlearn or unbelieve? Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Or some type of friction you had to remove from your life to level up? Yeah.
So interesting you say that, because it really revolves around people. And it's like, there's people in your life when you're talking to them, they're either quite negative or and that's okay. People are allowed to be negative, but when they're that all the time, it becomes a bit toxic. And and I can recall this happening where I've said a few times, like, I can't, being around this person isn't doing me any good at all. I'm slipping into, like in the Muppets, the two guys that sit up and they sit there and complain.
Yes.
Right? And you think to yourself, I don't want to end up like that guy.
So now I can't get that vision out of my head.
Yeah. So for me, the unlearn or the learning part was about, even if they're, close to you through whatever form it is, it's like, just cut it loose, man, because it's not helping. Yeah,
that's so true. That's so true. I've had to do a lot of that in my life, so I certainly understand that. It's so true. All right. Last two questions, man. Both of these I prepared you for in the green room. In the trenches, what is a quote or directive or anything that you've pulled yourself from, right? Maybe there's a quote or something that brought you inspiration to get you through that moment. What was that for you?
So, quick story. This is something I tell my boys. So, when we were in the US, we were walking to their elementary school, and Charlie, my oldest boy, he would have been about 6 at the time. He sprained his ankle on the way to school, and it wasn't a bad sprain. And he was like, "Oh, I can't go to school. It really hurts." And I just said, "Mate, you just got to push through. You just got to push through, right? You just push through, walk to school, you'll be right." And so, that's the mantra, right? For me, is just push through.
Love it. Just push through. And I love the story, man, because it gives some context of it may suck in that moment. We just got to push through it. I love it, man. All right. Last question is a 2-part question. I'll ask you the first part first. Because I tend to get a little excited, and in the conversation, I forget to ask it. So I'm going to ask this last part first.
Yeah.
Hey, so for you, what would you love to ask my next guest? And for those who are listening or watching, I always love to give an opportunity for a current guest to ask my next guest, challenge them with a question. And the lineup is completely anonymous, right?
Yeah.
So with that, what would you love to ask my next guest?
How much of your life was planned and how much it was related to luck?
Ooh, that's so good. I love that. And looking at my guest lineup, that's perfect. That's great, man. I so love doing these things. All right. So my previous guest had this for you, talking about, pivotal moments and so forth. What was a season of life that in the moment it was probably horrible, but you could say thank you for?
Yeah, I think outside of what we spoke about earlier, there was so, the easy answer is that, oh yeah, when I was in a current and all that sort of stuff. But to give a bit more flavour to the audience, there was a time when I was in an executive management role, working in an organisation, and it was completely toxic. It was terrible. Like, it was hard work. The leadership team wasn't singing off the same page. It was, it was like The Office, but the show, but rather than being funny, it was quite sad.
Oh, and sucks.
And I was there for a period of time, but I'm so thankful for it because it taught me a lot about what I didn't want to be and where I didn't want to be.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty significant moment. I thought, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. I could definitely resonate, man. I've been in a lot of situations, with the government contracting, and working with, I've been in some environments. I look back, I'm saying thank you for, because it really helped me forward to be the leader that I don't want to be because of that. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So love it, man. Well, Murray, my dude, really appreciated sharing the last hour with us, man. Tons of value in this, right? But thank you for not just sharing, the highlight reel of, MIT grad, all the facilitations you've done in the EOS world, but you also allowed us to be glimpse behind the scenes, from, your time as a cop, essentially life handed you a lot of lessons, but allowing us really to see that. So I honor and respect you for that, my man. Thank you.
Thanks, Karl. Appreciate being on.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, guys, those are listening or watching, everything about Murray, if you want to connect with him or anything of that nature, will be in the show notes. Please, feel free to reach out through his socials or website or anything that we drop in the show notes. To those listening and watching right now, the gap between average and excellence is just action, even imperfect action, right? So please, guys, don't just don't just sit here and listen to Murray today. Take one thing that he shared and implement it today, not tomorrow, not Monday, unless today's Monday. If you're listening to this, take it and use it. And as well as that, be the reason someone doesn't quit today. Don't just keep this episode to yourself. Someone in your circle needs this right now, so send it to them. Murray, again, my dude, thank you so much for stepping in, my dude. Awesome, man. It's good to have you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.